Hello and welcome everyone to roll call number 10. This is issue 1216 in the Ethereum PM repo. Link in the chat for the agenda. Okay, cool. Let's kick this off. So starting with some few updates on the L1. I'll give it over to Ansgar to talk about Spectra upgrade timelines.
Yeah. I have a presentation. I can share my screen. 1 second. This and then screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome. Yeah, so basically just a few quick updates. So Pectra, basically, we have just now, kind of last week on OrcoDevs, picked preliminary dates. Specifically, we've picked dates for the testnet folks yet so far, and then we have basically picked a date where we will choose when exactly it will hit mainnet, but we have not actually picked the specific mainnet date yet. And so these dates are we will have client releases out by tomorrow, the different clients, and then tomorrow or on Friday there will be an announcement blog post on the Ethereum Foundation blog. And then the actual kind of testnet forks will be Holeski will be on February 24th and Sepolia on March 5th. And then, assuming all of this goes smoothly, the idea would be that on the day after the Sepolia fork on March 6th, we would then basically make a decision on mainnet rollout, with the default assumption being that that should be roughly then be aimed at a month after the after that day. That has been historically the amount of time we wanted to give stakers to update their notes and everything. So assuming again everything goes smoothly, you could expect the hard fork to go live on mainnet around April 8th, plus minus a few days. Yeah, so that was basically that on the rollout dates. And if for example you want to test things on the test nets, then those test nets dates of course are relevant for you. So there's one point on updates from Orco devs. Then there was another one, request for feedback. I'm not sure, Kyle, did you want to talk about this, or otherwise I could talk about it as well?
I actually asked Kev, one of the EIP authors, to join so you could
Perfect.
quickly speak to it.
I'll keep sharing my screen, just but unless Kev wanted to share a screen.
Uh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we wanted to get some feedback on this ERC on allowing local block builders to specify the maximum amount of blobs that they can put inside of their own block, and basically see if there are any issues on the L2 side. I think one that we've fielded so far is that L2s usually post in batches of 5 or 6 blobs. Are there any sort of others?
You mean other concerns?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's specifically been a concern around the pricing as well. So basically, for the 1559 mechanism that we use for block prices as well, for that to actually have an equilibrium price that it stably stays at, more or less, you need to have at least the average throughput has to be at least at the target. And you could imagine if the ratio, if the portion of people of builders that basically that now limit the amount of blobs they include, and they limit it to a value below the target, if that becomes too large, then all of a sudden the average can't basically stay at or above the target anymore. At which point, basically the blob fee would go down to zero, or even once you already kind of get close to that level, the volatility of the blob base you would become larger. And so basically one question from the Ocative side, like now normally because of MEV boost, that will usually not happen. But you could imagine if there's an issue with MEV boost, people revert back to local building. Many people have set the flag. Now you're basically in a situation where the blob fee becomes more unstable. And so Yeah, so a question specifically was how much of a concern that would be for layer 2s. Maybe Kev, did you want to like make a little bit more of the case for like why would this flag be valuable?
Sorry. Yeah, sure. So essentially, there is a sort of a hardware and bandwidth requirement doc that we've been sort of trying to standardize for a while. And one issue that we have is that there are home stakers who clearly don't have sufficient bandwidth. So either we set the local block builder bandwidth to be, the bandwidth requirements to be that of sort of home stakers, or we set it to be somewhat of an average we've used the average of sort of the global average, and then we allow home stakers to sort of set their own numbers. This essentially allows us to scale the blobs according to this global average number while still keeping local home stakers sort of on the network.
Right. And so, yeah, just to add to that from my point, right? Like we're basically currently we are actively exploring how our kind of blob scaling roadmap should look like. And one concern there is that while it's pretty easy to make the availability sampling more efficient, I mean, literally right now we're doing the most dumb thing possible on Ethereum, where basically everyone just downloads all the blobs to check that they're available. That's of course a temporary solution while we are rolling out like a sampling-based approach. But even once we have the sampling-based approach, you can make that more and more efficient over time. So basically you can increase the overall throughput on the network and still put the per node kind of like download bandwidth to check the availability is basically still can be relatively low. The big problem is that the one bottleneck that's a bit harder to get rid of is the builder. So the builder basically, right, like because the moment you create the block, you also have to rapidly seed all the blobs to the network to then that they can then be sampled. And so basically the two schools of thoughts here would be to basically really keep the overall blob throughput very low to allow for local builders even with basically limited upload bandwidth to basically like limit the throughput of the entire network because of the slowest nodes basically and then figure out like maybe some long-term solutions with distributed block building or something. The alternative would be we say, okay, we want to actually scale a bit more aggressively, a bit faster, but it would come with this trade-off of basically having to introduce a flag like this, which could basically have some drawbacks. So basically the question would be for layer 2s, what is more important? I mean, a little bit like simplified, but like would it be more important for you to have 5 times more blob throughput, or would it be more important for you to have very stable blob fees? Basically, which if you can only choose one of the two, which of the two is more important? That's basically a signal that RollCall is trying to get right now. Yeah. So either if there's anyone on the call right now that has any like strong opinions from the L2 side on like whether you need more fee stability or more higher blob throughput, that would be good to hear. Otherwise, also like yeah, again, you can relay that question, and then if someone on the team has a strong opinion, ideally kind of filter that back to us or just directly kind of have that be visible to the codec process.
I just have an opinion. I'm just trying to understand if this will be helping because this is an ERC or maybe whatever RRC, if it turns out to be for Rollup, this is not a mandatory one for people. Like, so even if we are having this proposal in, we are kind of providing an option to layer 2 to maybe pick up between the uneven distribution and high block fees. However, I believe that we have 7691 already planned for Pectra, so that could help with some of the even distribution among the cloud, or that is already providing the new target thing.
Right. Yeah. So this ERC is not directly targeting L2s at all. This is basically just for clients to expose a new default parameter that would then be set by stakers. So the question is basically just if we do this, should this make us comfortable starting to scale blobs more? Or should we basically not do that because the downside of potential fee instability outweighs the extra blob throughput we could get?
Maybe
Okay.
just from linear point of view, obviously we are interested in having fee stability, but having higher throughput is more important.
Okay, that's good to hear. I think kind of that was the intuition that we all, Carl and Kevin, I already had, but yeah, having it like hearing it directly from the L2s, I think is a much stronger argument we can then bring back to our codevs, rather than just basing it on our intuition. Ivo?
Yeah, so to add on top of that, so like on linear side, what we can essentially do is that like we can slightly delay posting the blobs. And so I think like let's say it won't affect us like too much. Like if let's say like if there are like a lot of like several proposals like in a row like who want to include less blobs. But like how like do you have like envisioned like how it would affect like pricing the blobs? Because let's say like if there are like several proposers like willing to include less blobs, so like it would also mean that like we let's say the average or like for the running average of included blobs like it would decrease a bit. So like it would also affect the like the blob base fee. So does like are there like any compensation mechanisms for that or?
Yeah, so long term, we can definitely look into compensation mechanisms. So for now, basically, the effect would be you could imagine that in a couple months, especially once we have the Fusaka fork that will come after Pectra, we will have a relatively like big jump up in the blob target and maximum. And at that level, it could just be that occasionally, yeah, as you said, there are several proposals in a row that all do not even reach the target, even though there would be enough demand just because of their local flags. And so that could mean that occasionally, basically, the base fee could artificially fall a little under the equilibrium, and then you would basically have a situation where for several blocks in a row, there would be basically more blobs than there would be room, and so then you would have to fall back to either just waiting for several slots until you basically find room in a block, or you basically have to revert back to a first price auction via the tip. And so that is a bit of extra complexity for layer 2s because now you have to have that logic implemented, right? To basically either, I mean, you can always just submit the transaction and it'll just take a little longer sometimes to be picked up, or you need to have logic around recognizing when that happens and basically setting a tip that accounts for basically the priority you would want to have. And again, in the unlikely scenario that there are issues with MEV boost, it could be that like the base fee could fall quite a bit. So it could possibly even for a while stay at 1, well, basically go all the way down basically to the minimum, and then stay at that minimum for an extended period of time, at which point you basically have to send attach tips to your blob transactions to make sure that they can still be picked up.
It might also be useful to note that without this flag, if we do scale, in sort of the happy case, the local block builder would just probably miss the slot instead of proposing with like less blobs.
Right, but more likely we would just not even scale as far to begin with, and so then if we basically if we were to decide that we would not ship this flag, then what that would probably mean is that we would say 8 months from now, 9 months from now, we would only have half the the blob throughput. So
Sure.
basically, opting into the flag means opting into more blobs.
And on that point, I think that's why this kind of is a consensus item. Like it's not a part of the L1 consensus, but we would need to have kind of it would be necessary for us to agree broadly that we need to have this included in order to be able to push blob scaling to sort of average throughput levels as opposed to be limited by the slowest nodes. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Carl?
I had should I
Mhm.
I had one more brief slide from the ACD set, Carl, if
Please.
you and that was, I mean, that was in a way like the most open-ended one. I just wanted to flag it. Not sure if there's even any feedback on the call now, but basically just so you're aware, right now on the L1 side, there's a little bit of an active conversation around what should the roadmap priorities be? Not so much the roadmap itself. I think we have a pretty good grasp where L1 wants to go. But in terms of like in the rollout, whenever there are more features than we can fit into a single fork, like how should we prioritize that? Like sometimes there are questions around should a fork wait so we can add more features, or should it be rolled out as quickly as possible? So basically, we currently are revisiting how we prioritize shipping features on the L1. Specifically also because Pectra, like we basically ended up having to split the fork into two to make it still shippable sized chunks, which for example delayed the PIADAS rollout and delayed the blob scaling a little bit. So yeah, of course there are different stakeholders on Ethereum, so different people would have different priorities in terms of what is most important to them. I just wanted to list a few basically different, like this is not at all conclusive or specifically representative, just like types of changes that one could prioritize, and so clearly the L2s would have a specific kind of partial interest here, but just wanted to say, like, if there are specific things that you think the L1 should really prioritize, for example, we've heard over the last few weeks talking to different L2s that for some at least, the kind of the blob throughput really is starting to get like quite the constraining factor, and so that would for them be the most important thing, but that's not true for everyone. Some others also, for example, like that with 7702, we shipped some UX improvements on the EVM side. So again, just if there's any specific things where you feel like you would personally wish that, or as a team would wish that the L1 would basically have more of a priority for, then I think that would just be really good to hear, to make visible, mention it now, or come talk to us, or just mention it publicly so that it filters into the core dev process. I think right now is a moment in time where that would actually have quite the impact. So I just wanted to mention that as my last point from the L1 side.
Great. Thank you, Oscar. Okay, on to the next topic. Josh Rudolph wanted to give an update on how the interop efforts are going, so I'll hand it over to Josh.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
A little soft, but otherwise we got you.
Okay, let me know if you need me to talk louder. Sorry, it's a little early and my brain isn't fully activated yet, so bear with me. But yeah, I'll just give you all a quick rundown on some of the interop efforts. I think maybe many of you listening here now and to the recording will already be aware of this, so I'll try to keep it short perhaps, and yeah, please reach out to me if any questions, and we can also yeah, follow up on this. But so yeah, so the quick overview for folks here is, as I think many of you know, we started this L2 interop working group in January. High level idea is to bring everyone who is working on interop across Ethereum and see if we can accelerate both shipping of near-term solutions and also improve coordination around longer-term initiatives, and trying to balance both of those things together. I think just, I guess my personal take is that perhaps we haven't optimized enough for some of the shipping of near-term solutions, and so I'm really spending a bit more of my time there at the moment. And overall, just the theme of how do we unify the unification efforts. There's lots of different interop efforts happening across the ecosystem. lots of different coordination efforts, and yeah, necessary to, or I think it would be preferable for us to better coordinate the coordination. So we've had 2 calls so far. From those calls, we've had 3 separate tracks get created. These 3 tracks are number 1, chain-specific addresses, number 2, cross-chain messaging, and number 3, intents. We're fairly high conviction, or I guess I should say I'm fairly high conviction that all 3 of these will play a big role in near-term unification efforts, but perhaps intents will be the most likely path to actually us shipping something to users in the next 3 to 4 months, and well, chain-specific addresses as well will play a part in that. And again, I guess that's really what yeah, I've tried to keep the group focused on. How can we move faster and ship something in these next 3 to 4 months? TBD exactly around, like, yeah, what does that mean exactly to ship something in the next 3 to 4 months? Is that realistic or not? And just what is the highest value thing to ship there? Would also want to do it, of course, in a way where it doesn't cause us to get stuck at some crappy local maxima, but rather do it in a way where it also accelerates and supports the longer term efforts. So trying to keep an eye on both things. I guess a couple of just final points with regards to intents. That's where I'm putting, again, more of my focus for the moment. There's been a really, yeah, I don't think this will be a surprise to most people with 7683 and other efforts. There's been a lot of momentum and progress happening here. And yeah, we should have more actually to announce around this on our next call, which is tomorrow. Would be great for anyone who wants to join that. Yeah, ping me for more information, and I'll also post it here in the Zoom chat. So yeah, I think that's it. Sorry if it was a little bit all over the place. Those are just my quick notes on interop. And again, yeah, anyone that wants to jump in would be great. L2 teams, wallets, anyone who is working on anything related to this or just have an interest in this. Oh, and I just noticed we also have Skelly here in the Zoom call right now, and he's been playing a big role. Wonderland has been yeah, really great in jumping into some of these interop efforts. So quick shout out to the Wonderland team. Yeah, that's it for me.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Anyone have any comments, questions about that? Nope. All right. So on to the next topic. There's an overhaul of RIP 7859, exposing the L1 origin information side the L2 execution environment. I don't believe the author is here. Is anyone else would like to give an update on that? Or have context exactly on what was happening there? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no. Then moving on to the next topic is a new RIP 7875. I'll hand over to Yoav to talk about that.
Yeah, hi. Okay, so yeah, RIP 7875. It's related to ERC 7802, which standardizes token mint and burn bridges. Basically standardizing the way tokens can be minted and burned on L2 when receiving messages from another chain, whether it's L1 or another L2. So with this ERC, we noticed that tokens embed the trusted canonical bridge address, the 7802 bridge address, in order to trust it. So it affects the tokens code and therefore the token address. So we are proposing an RIP that standardizes it, that standardizes the bridge address. A while ago we introduced EAP 7587, which reserved a range for RIP precompiles. So we are proposing to use one of these addresses and set it as a token bridge, so that when you deploy tokens on an L2, whether it supports 7802 or not, if your token wants to support it, it should use this, it should trust this address. And then at any point in time, if the rollup adds support for such a token bridge, we know that these tokens are going to be future compatible. And of course, they get to be in the same create2 address because as on other L2s, because they all have the same, they all share the same trusted address. So sorry if I sound a bit confused here. I also also a bit tired. But any questions about it?
I have something to add. Not sure if you guys can hear me okay.
Yeah,
but
thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks also for the intro. One of the key things that we're trying to do with this RIP is that we want these ERC20s that have no owner to be able to be permissionlessly deployed in a safe manner, pointing to the same bridge address on different ecosystems. This is mainly because, for example, OP or ARP or any other of these new, let's say, cluster of chains will have their own, let's say, ecosystem bridge that is not necessarily the same as the canonical bridge pointing from L2 to L1 and backwards. The thing is, they will probably have bridges connecting either from their L2 to their L3s or from the L2s to their sibling L2s, such as in OP Introp. And these specific bridges are the ones that will start to use this kind of cross-chain mint-burn interface. And those bridges are not necessarily standardized in any way right now. So tokens that are, say, just vanilla cross-chain ERC20s will need to have like modifications depending on which ecosystem they're deployed on. So kind of propagation of these assets becomes a little bit of a headache, both for developers, for users, and for, let's say, off-chain infrastructure, such as relayer solvers, same for intents. So this is kind of a solution that you have had kind of future-proofing some of the headaches that we might have with all of these cross-chain asset transfers.
So anyone here has any questions about it?
Fantastic. Thanks, Yoav, and Stilo. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Does anyone have anything else that would like to raise/discuss?
Well, I could give a quick update just from the working group from last week. So last week we had like a RollCall breakout on basically exploring the EVM or the execution common core idea, having a bundle of IPs that basically would all have broad support across multiple L2s, and we could basically make them the canonical set of IPs to support for wallets and the kind of the tool chain in general, so that there's less of fragmentation. There were some discussions there already, kind of in the lead up to the call. In general, sentiment seems to be that like it is a bit early right now for that, specifically because we just don't have that many individual IPs yet that are live or close to live. I mean, we have the R1 curve, 7 to 12, but other than that, just not that many IPs kind of in that stage yet. So it seems like a bit premature. So basically we'll revisit the idea once we have a few more IPs, at least close to ready for rollout. And then we discussed a little bit kind of candidates that are currently being discussed. For one, there was definitely things. There was some things related to interop that came up. There was the L1S load, the static call ideas. But that I think would, if those IPs move forward, then more through the interop side of things, not so much kind of from the RollCall side directly. And then one last thing, there's that one potential for future standardization for future IP that I personally am quite excited about and would want to try to move a bit along over the next few weeks or months. Is the idea of having a standardized transaction type or of a fee market for L2s. And they are basically what we did so far is I created a document, I'll link it in chat, with basically the design considerations of what would such a transaction type look like. I can maybe briefly, I don't know, just like 30 seconds, give you like a quick overview. So basically the idea here would be just to say that in principle, we kind of really need a multidimensional fee market mechanism for L2s because there are these like fundamentally different types of costs. There's the L2 execution cost that's more parallel to what we also have on the L1. But then there's specifically also like the settlement cost, the data cost for that basically is like a pass-through cost from the L1. And then there's, at least for ZK rollups, things like the proving cost. And so actually exposing that in a multidimensional framework would be quite desirable. And the nice thing is that we already have proposals for multidimensional fee markets on the L1 anyway. Specifically, there's EIP 7706, which would basically split out the call data dimension. But the nice thing is Vitalik proposed that in a way that would be basically express these dimensions as just like a vector of dimensions, so that it would start out with 2 on mainnet, but it could be extensible both on mainnet with future dimensions, but then also on the L2s. So the goal would be to like explore this and find a setup that basically is in sync with where the L1 is going there. One open question there is just, do we basically then have to move at the speed of the L1 and wait until the CIP moves far long enough that we can make sure that there's ends up not being no subtle incompatibility between the two types? We'll have to see. Maybe we can also have the L1 commit to using the L2 type even before it itself kind of moves forward with that. Yeah, there's a few extra aspects like the kind of compatibility with account abstraction. Where exactly would the standardization boundary be? To what extent basically to actually expose the multidimensionality in the transaction type or just in the underlying mechanism, extensibility, interop considerations. So a bunch of these things. So it's by no means like an IP or anything yet. It will require some further exploration to get to a specific proposal, but it seemed like there was meaningful interest in basically that once there would be a proposal that works for what L2s need from it, then I think that could be a very reasonable candidate for standardization. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. Yeah, but basically a bit premature for moving forward with the common core idea for now. And see, there was one question in the chat. How does this relate to the work being done by the Oasis Ethereum L2 group? Yeah, that's a great question that came up on the call as well. So basically, they are focusing a lot on specifically standardizing the side, the part of the kind of the mechanism that does not actually require changes to the L2 itself or to the including, say, a new transaction type, but just the interaction between wallets and L2s, right? So basically the gas estimation and that kind of thing. So in a way, it's orthogonal or synergetic to this, right? So basically, you could imagine that there might need to also be an extension to the kind of that existing standard that they are developing once the fee market itself also changes. But basically, their approach was to basically standardize the thing that can easily be standardized even without IPs. But the more fundamental kind of solution is to then also have a standard for the fee market itself, not just for how it is exposed to wallets. But yeah, it's not competing efforts or anything. They're very much synergetic.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ansgar. Any other discussions? things people would like to raise before we wrap up? Great. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. If you haven't thought much, or basically your feedback on the discussion around this new flag on the L1 would be very much appreciated. If you haven't thought much about it, or you feel like there's someone on your team who could give useful feedback there, that'd be very much appreciated. And could potentially impact long-term scaling of blobs dramatically on the L1. So yeah, would recommend doing so. And yeah, thanks all. See ya.
Thank you.